Welcome back, everybody. It is Anime Talks, and it's been such a long time since our last episode, but we're back, and we'll be covering right back into the grid of things within ReZero. And our last episode was on season one. This time, we're gonna combine both season two and season three, mainly because season three really wasn't. I just was able to finish it maybe about a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was not as long as I thought, and it was one of those moments where like I realized right after the fact that it really wasn't as you got to the end before you knew you was at the end, and it was pretty impactful. So. We're going to dig right back into where we left off, and let's get it rolling. So we're following Subaru Natsuki, and we realize that he is able to do the return by death. He finds that out, and he is in the castle of Roswell. And what's happening is he's still being under attack, and he can't find out the reason why he's getting killed, and everything's becoming a mystery. Each and every way he does things, he ends up getting messed up. Well, shortly after that, as far as season two goes, we realize that he ends up finding out a lot of things along the way. For one, his biggest obstacle was he was trying to do all that searching around to find out what was afflicting him with death, and it is indeed a mob beast that was infecting the nearby village that he ended up going to plenty of times during that moment, I would have to say, or throughout his alternate time periods or universes. You know what I mean? He goes there multiple different ways, and he ends up getting bit by this dog. Well, this dog ends up being the mob beast, the leader of the mob beast. On top of that, it is crazy. He finds out. He does a lot of things to put a plan together to be able to figure this out. And once he finds it out, I'm telling you, it's like probably one of the biggest things that I like about this show is his death, and then returning back from death gets better and better as far as season one and season two goes, because there's so much mystery. You know, I feel like season three, we lose that aspect where the return by death is more or less the lore behind the return by death and the figuring out and all that. But nonetheless, we end up running into a lot of different situations where his return by death within season one and season two are very impactful. There's a lot of things that we're trying to learn with Subaru as he's going through his missions. And following right after that, the next major event or plot point that we end up seeing would follow with the white whale hunt. That was probably one of the biggest things, and then we have probably within that spectrum probably one of the biggest climatic changes for the show, and that is the affliction that ends up hurting Rim, where she's and it's within like a little flashback. It's the way they do it. It's the way they set it up. I have to say, I don't mind it, because the way they do it is you have a lot of high action things, and then everything comes to a halt, and then we go back in time, like within a small episode, where they do a little flashback where they're like, okay, well, this happened here when you thought this didn't happen. So everybody within the white whale was getting their memory, like the person that was attacked by the white whale or the smoke, the fog, whatever you call it, was being forgotten. All their memories are being forgotten. At least that is what we thought. When in all reality, the the arch sin bishop of gluttony was actually eating their memories and wiping them from everybody else's memories, which is super wild, super crazy on how that works. And that impacted a lot of things, because the way we find out is Subaru ends up looking at the merchant and is like, "Hey, where's Rem?" And he's like, "Who is Rem? Who is Rem? Who do you speak of? Calm down, chill out. You're getting mad over nothing when you get mad over nobody that was here." And then it throws you for a huge psychological like mind game here, because now you're thinking, the way they presented it, it was perfect. Like, you did not know that. You felt as if you were the problem trying to recollect and see, was Rim even there? You know, they did really good with the transition to that. I'd have to say the peak of season 2 really is the development between Subaru and Rim. That their relationship did so well. And of course, I do some research on the side and find out why they did that in the show, and it was sort of a letdown as far as what the author wanted to do with when it became the anime adaptation, as if they followed the manga to the T. It's pretty sad. It was more or less that Rim was going to slow down the character development of Subaru, so they threw that in there, and I'm just like, God, that's diabolical. That probably one of Subaru's high time number one cheerleader, which at this time there's some issues between him and the half elf, and it is not going so well between them. Him and Amelia have like such a horrible relationship, because that was just around the time where he wasn't supposed to go back to the Roswell estate, and there's just so much going on with that you just don't know what's going on between them. So then you have Rim, who's like filling in, just finding out and breaking down and getting out of that hatred of, oh, you're just a pathetic. Well, I mean, she still thinks he's pathetic, but she supports him and sees that his drive is just great. It's just impeccable. It's just, he's so honored and diligent, or I can't find the word right now. He's dedicated. He's resilient. He's just so determined to try his best. That's what she likes about him, and that is what really is. Matter of fact, I will have to say, Subaru is probably up there with like probably one of the most annoying MCs in any anime, and that's just my honest opinion. But you got to give it to him. He has a lot of heart, a lot of drive, and that makes it to where you're just engulfed in what happens next, because he's trying so hard with this major problem he has, where he gets killed and has to redo everything and find out what's going on. But at the same time, not being able to address and let anybody know what's going on. So he can't really get any assistance or help other than to get wiser and stronger and figure out what's going on. So as our story and the world develops around the loss of Rim, as she's like in a vegetative state, we've lost Rim, and now Subaru has now survived the white whale attack, which we then see so many characters that are now enlisted. Right before this, Subaru does make a pact with the the other candidates for the throne to be able to go help him and be able to take down the White Whale. And what's so crazy is the way that it's set up. He does die a couple times in between this. So he's redoing these negotiations and getting wiser. And this is where, like, you can see his character development really does take a step. Every time he dies, he takes a step forward. As a matter of fact, he gets to the point to where he is almost intentionally dying at times to go back and redo things. But in the earlier segments, as far as season one goes, he does blindly go out to die, to go back because he's just in a panic to go back and go fix things. Now is more or less he's like, okay, this didn't go right. Let me go die. I know what to do. And then it makes it almost to the point to where it's like less impactful, so, like later on, because it's just like, okay, you're way too confident in the ability. It's not good, it's almost, I'll say this: season half of season 2 and season 3, we don't see as much of that. It slows down to where he's not. It's almost like a one take on everything. He's just surviving and making it throughout everything. And I believe the development that's getting there is where things get better. So within the development, and we have all these nations teaming up, took out the White Whale, and that with them sort of teaming up now and getting everything together, he super pretty much took care of all the quote unquote foreign affairs to help Amelia out in the long run, because he knows she needs help, and he knows that things are going to get tough and get worse, and they need the backup. And it's because as well of he knows what's going to happen when he returns back to the estate. And that is where all the twists and turns come, where we just don't know what's going to happen at that time. And it's because he's made it back to the estate, has gotten killed like 2 or 3 different times, getting taken back to the estate. While he's going back to the estate, he's getting killed multiple times, whether it's by the finger people. Yeah, he got killed by Puck one time, and he's just getting obliterated over and over and over. And eventually he puts together an elaborate plan, and then we end up meeting even more people. The cast gets better and better. He ends up getting he brings Cruchet back in. He ends up bringing and then Cruchet's little feline guardian. I can't recall the name right now. It'll probably come back to me. And we end up seeing the ties and connections that Subaru has made has led to many things. He ends up going to go get the night that completely wasted him. Completely wasted him and embarrassed him inside this little fight. Whenever it was at the beginning, when they were talking down on Amelia at the I guess you could say the introduction of all the candidates, and they were just talking bad on Amelia for being a half elf, and Subaru stood up. Well, when he stood up, he was then confronted by Julius, and it's very, very, very interesting on how that goes. So him and Julius ends up being rivals, really nasty rivals, and then Julius also comes to rendezvous with him in season two for the White Whale event. And then Julius returns back within. No, Julius actually, we actually see less of Julius in season three. And we end up having a lot, a lot. I'm telling you, we see a lot of things happen with Subaru getting all these people together. We see the likes of Otto, which is our merchant. We have Willem van Austria, which is the father and father and husband of the previous and current master swordsman. And things get super, super crazy. It makes you want to cry. We end up running into like a lot of different problems within the deal of taking back the estate. And once he gets to a certain point to be able to get the estate back, we run into the major, probably one of the biggest plot changes within the show, because we end up hearing about these Sin archbishops, right? The only changes that we run into is more or less we have a nasty fight with, like, or is more or less before the fight, the only Sin archbishop we heard of is the disgusting I can't remember his name right now, but we hear about gluttony, and the only reason we hear about gluttony is because it was more or less a rumor that was going around that once the Sin Archbishop Gluttony gets a hold of you, things go crazy. And we only find that out from Beatrice, because when they brought Rem back to the estate, eventually, when they were able to get back into it, Rem could not heal. Rem could not be healed because she was afflicted by something that was a lot stronger than what Beatrice can be able to take care of. Well, then a little deeper into that, she explains what's going on and then tells Subaru that it has to be a Sin Archbishop's doing. And it's crazy. It's crazy. So, nonetheless, we have the Sin Archbishops that completely change everything. Completely change everything. And we end up having the nasty showdown between Sin Archbishop Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is probably the main antagonist of season 2. More or less the end of season 1, beginning of season 2. There's so much to cover about this guy, but Betelgeuse is probably the pivotal person that really moves the end of season 1, beginning of season 2. He ties in so much, and he also has his own thing going back way back then. Way back then. Betelgeuse has probably one of the most deeper stretching roles within the show. And you really, it's pretty sad. Like, it makes you want to cry with how things went with him. He actually spent most of the time in his earlier life being in love with Fortuna, which is Amelia's aunt, and he was attacked. And when everything was going downhill within this past issue, Betelgeuse, he ends up taking on and acquiring a power to be able to help Fortuna, which ends up being to his demise. He used the authority and ends up going crazy. Lo and behold, he ends up going crazy, and his mind played tricks on him, thinking he was attacking and helping to save Amelia and Fortuna while they were in the midst of a fight between with Pandora. And next thing you know, he comes to and notices that he kills the woman he loved, which is Fortuna. And that was that was probably one of the craziest moments where you couldn't help but feel bad. And then it's just it's a lot. Betelgeuse, he's just one of those characters that he probably has the saddest story, that was probably the darkest told within the show, where he was just a really, really strong, timid, humble man who would go help Fortuna, who had a crush on Fortuna, and was helping the elves out. And just everything was sort of going downhill, and he just couldn't. Things just weren't working out, and they end up getting attacked by another one, which is pretty crazy. Something that we're going to see a little later on within the series. We end up running into Pandora and Sin Bishop of Greed, Regulus Cornelius. When that showdown happens, Pandora actually takes Cornelius or Regulus and yeets him to somewhere else to where he couldn't get in the way. And that was that portion. Now, to jump back into our timeline where Betelgeuse ends up getting taken out by Subaru. That finally gets done, but in the midst of that, we see a lot of different things happen within it, where Betelgeuse actually was able to, on death, he was able to transfer himself and was put into Subaru and just take over Subaru once he was dead. It was crazy. It was a bunch of wild things that was happening, and you just got to watch it. It's really good. Everything that was going on. It was just nice. It was nice. It was nice. But the ending was Subaru was able to get everybody together. He was able to get William, Julius, Felix, and everybody to get together and put a little group together to do a subjugation against Sloth, against Betelgeuse, and then he was able to acquire the witch factor afterwards. So like I said, there's a lot of development. There's a lot of things going on. You just can't deny that part. That part's like the biggest thing ever, is that everything's happening at one time. You're just like, it's crazy. Just crazy. And whenever we get past this portion, we end up going to more of a slower pace little thing. And I feel like there's a lot of times where shows do this, and this is where I have to say I don't really care for the show. And season 3 really does it for me. We end up getting a lot of things happening in the end of season 2. Between season 2 and season 3, mainly the end of season 2. Um, there's a forest that needs to be saved, and or this little village. Matter of fact, it's called the Sanctuary. There's this place called the Sanctuary where all these people were brought to at some point, all within the past life of, we have Echidna, Beatrice, and young Roswell. They all are together in this to try to protect the sanctuary. And when things are going downhill and there's a bunch of fights, they end up taking this really timid, mute girl way back then and use her soul or her body to be able to protect the sanctuary with a barrier. And whenever we go back for these flashbacks, see, I mean, they were good. They were good, but it was one of those, what's going on here? Like, why are we going away? Why are we going away from such a very good, it's sad. It's like, why are we going to this point to where we have to leave our really strong plot? One, season 1 and the beginning of season 2 really has you reeled in, and it's good. And this is where we're starting to die out. So Ryuzu, which is the small little timid demi human who is used as her body is being used as the vessel to take care of the sanctuary with the barrier. Well, we end up also learning that there's a prophecy that's being told within these books that are held by Roswell and Beatrice that are telling everything that has to happen, and they're pretty much falling in line to allow things to happen the way they're happening. Within that same situation, we also have a whole new issue with the fact that there's a trial that you have to complete to save the sanctuary. And this is where Amelia now comes in, and she has this huge conflict of seeing her past. And when her past is now brought into the situation, of course, I did jump a little forward to explain this, but within the sanctuary, I call it the sanctuary arc. I think that's the best way to word it. The sanctuary arc, we do see this going back into the past of Amelia. I did jump ahead and explained it earlier, but it leads up to saying that this was her trial, was to go back over and relive everything. She has to go back and relive everything and fight her past and see the meaning behind it and be stronger. And Echidna, who's like her arch nemesis, really, it's just crazy how the arch and bishop of greed is crazy. uh, or not the arch and bishop, the witch of greed, Echidna. It is crazy. it is crazy. So while this is all going on, there's a lot of other interesting factors that are going on. You have Roswald, who's like kind of going in between these little weird sections where he's kind of on our side, kind of not on our side, and our side meaning Subaru side. And we also meet a couple more people. We end up meeting right before when they were leaving from the estate to get to the sanctuary. They meet a demi-human who ends up being a return so far it looks like she's a returning character from what they say. That's what they say. And returning character meaning returning worker. She used to be a maid, but we meet Frederica, and she is pretty interesting as well. And it's kind of wild. She's awesome. We just ends up seeing how much Subaru's harem is just getting like crazy huge at this point. Well, we end up seeing on a deeper level that there's some very sketchy things that happens later. And in the sanctuary, the plot that changes is Frederica did not tell them that her brother, which is Garfield, is in the sanctuary, that wants to protect the sanctuary and is super mad at everybody on the outside. And Garfield's and the way I'm telling these characters as we progress is I am most definitely doing a covering of them, of how we meet them all the way until their season 3 counterparts or their season 3 changes. So this is a season 2 Garfield where we meet him, and he is just aggressive, angry, and he is falling behind Grandma, which is Ryuzu. And of course, Ryuzu, the way this was manipulated, Ryuzu is able to create multiple copies of herself, almost like an inorganic version of herself. So like almost at a homunculi, kind of sorta. And we end up seeing Garfield follow Ryuzu everywhere and protect her because Ryuzu is trying to protect the sanctuary, right? So we end up running into a lot of different changes, and Garfield's change really helped a lot. So, and we see that he's really just an afflicted boy who ends up losing his mom early. As far as what the show shows us in season two, he leaves and gets so pissed at how life was turning out. His sister leaves. The mom leaves, or really it's the mom then the sister leaves. And the sister leaves to go make a better life, to be able to come back and go and help him, but was end up getting it caught up into other affairs. The mom leaves, and he's under the impression that his mom leaves to go just have another life without him around, when indeed that wasn't the case. If within season 2 to season 3, we do get a small flashback of the closing for Garfield in season 3. He meets his mom, but his mom actually loses her memories, which is pretty crazy. I believe she was attacked by the arch symbiote of gluttony and lost all her memories, which is why she couldn't remember to go back and get them. The show takes such interesting turns with each character, and I'm telling you, season 1, season 2 is going to live up to the hype for the most part. Season 3 is where we really see the decline in like character development, as far as like we get closing out of story development for certain people. character development or as far as the world building starts to slow down because we're met with so many different angles. But I'll definitely say, for the most part, if you're already in for the story, seasons 1 and 2 will carry you enough to where you will watch season 3. You can't help it but just to find out what's going to happen and how things will play out moving forward. And I'll have to say the season 2 trials, which is what we end up going to when they're able to sort all the differences. Um, there's a couple times, of course, Subaru dies in the midst of all this. Then we see the stepping up of people like Otto. Otto comes in and plays a huge portion in being a really good friend to Subaru and really stepping up and helping him out within the sanctuary arc. It becomes just crazy how much of a he stepped up and became such a good portion of almost like he wasn't a side character. He wasn't just an NPC anymore. He was actually a part of such a huge feat for Team Natsuki. And we end up seeing the torment and the dismay of Roswell. We see his true intentions and where everything's going, and it's centered around this book. And this book he received from none other Echidna, and it's things are just taking crazy twists. And we see Rom, who is fighting, and of course I left out Rom. Rom really is just really a heavy support character. She's just there, just following and doing whatever. And Rom is, if I did not cover it in the previous episode, Rom is Rim's twin sister, and Rom was able to to survive and make it all the way until this point because of what they did to Rim. But what we have come to see is Rom, sadly, and again sadly blind and blindly follows Roswell. And we end up seeing in the development of the Sanctuary arc where Rom most definitely is in love with Roswell, which is why she does what she does. She has all the dedication and knows that he's been following this book and wants to free him. So they actually have their own showdown at some point within the Sanctuary arc, which is crazy there too. And Garfield is also part of his own version of things. And it's just the Sanctuary arc is just, it's crazy. That's really all I can say. It's crazy. Things are just going left and right. A lot of interpersonal struggles are happening between all the people, and it gets really good. I really enjoy it. And as we finish up the Sanctuary portion of saving the Sanctuary, which would require the trials to be completed, we are met with even more of a caveat with Subaru actually having the power to go do the trials. And this is another important part of the whole season 2 altogether, where between Amelia and Subaru, we end up having a lot. When I mean a lot, I'm saying a lot of interactions with all the different witches of all the different sins and personalities. And we get a tour, and that is probably one of the most respectable and likable things of season 2 is, we hear about all these witches, but we never seen them. We just heard the stories. And eventually they put a face with the names, and it was wholesome. It was good. It was twisting and turning. But between Subaru and Amelia doing their trials, we were able to finally get everything together. And within Subaru's trials, we learned something even more and deeper and darker to the story. Um, when he's afflicted by the witch of envy, which the witch of envy is actually just super madly in love with Subaru and wants to keep him alive. That is what we end up seeing, and it is very crazy, which makes sense because he's saved by death, saved by that that witch, which is crazy, and is because she's envious, she's jealous, she wants to keep him alive for herself, and that's just how that affliction works, and that authority. So it's very twisting and turning to finally learn this later on in the series, or the midway point where it's trying to put it together for us now, and you just see the background of everything, and the greed, which a greed ends up, or Echidna ends up getting really, really buddy with Subaru. There's a lot of things that are learned between, and then Subaru ends up making an interesting pact with Echidna. Just things are just really tossing and turning, and everything's kind of coming together. You just see a lot of different interactions with different characters that is just building up the world in different ways, and it feels so good to finally see these things, just so they can like let us down to season 3. And what we end up finally catching is, between our showdowns, and I will cover these showdowns before we get deeper into the rest of the trials for Subaru. In the final showdowns, Amelia is mourning the loss of Puck, because when she went through the sanctuary, that her little necklace pendant that carried the soul somewhat of Puck broke, and we see Puck way later, where he had made a pact with Rom to take down Roswell. That was probably a high time, pretty cool. You just didn't see it coming. You're just like, okay, welcome back, Puck. You did great. Just to kind of just step in, and then you see this happen. You're just like, okay, that was nice. Like, it's nice to see some development back in the play. And Puck does apologize to Amelia later, and bring up how, hey, I'm sorry I had to do this, but I had this planned. I had to do this. This was necessary for your growth. And I think that's kind of it's kind of like how they took Rem away from Subaru so he can grow. I'm pretty positive that was necessary for the development for Amelia to get to where she got to in the story. And Subaru's trials really covered, and which was interesting, was all his saved by death alternate timelines were finally shown to him, and it was pretty cool. It was interesting. It was kind of like watching the butterfly effect, but in reverse. It was basically showing all of the futures, the potential futures that were possible had he not died again. Or let me reword that. It showed all the potential futures after his death. What was going to happen to the people around him when he died here or when he died there? What happens to whoever following the death? And it was pretty interesting. I liked it. It was something to like feed into, because you always wondered, kind of like, okay, well, he died to do this. Well, what would have happened if he just would have stuck with it? Or what would have happened after his death? And they finally showed us all the different timelines of him using return by death, but what was happening after the death, the what ifs. I do enjoy that they gave us the whole what if without us having to say, well, what if. It was good. It was something, some good food to have within an episode, to try to kind of like stimulate you. And again, this is all in season 2, and I will say this again, like I said multiple times, season 1 and season 2 definitely carried the show. Season 3 is definitely where we see the decline and character development. We kind of just see a little bit of just everything here and there. And as I get to season 3, you will definitely notice that they broaden the cast so much with this huge battle that's coming up that it's almost impossible to keep up with it in a healthy way, to where it makes sense and it's enjoyable, unless you just like the show, which I did. Me and my daughter, we binged through it. It was really good for the fact that we already like it. But as far as like my own objective opinion, they definitely dropped the ball within season 3, and season 2 definitely comes to a very hefty close when they won. They liberated Sanctuary. They were able to get all the people out, and the people are more accepting of Amelia after that, and that's all Amelia wanted. And Amelia faces her fears. Subaru admits that he loves her, and I have to also add within this the silly trope of it. And I think girls thought this when I was growing up. For all those that are listening and that have not caught the beginning of the series, I am 32. So back when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure girls thought that if you kiss a guy, you got pregnant. That's what your parents told you to try to get you to stop from from meddling with the opposite sex too early in life. And that is what was thought upon by Amelia. And Subaru kisses Amelia, which makes it hilarious, super hilarious. Or I want to say it's a hug. I can't remember. They had a very passionate moment at some point where he's able to profess his love to Amelia. And then later on, we hear Amelia go through a long, dragged out session of she's saying, she's trying to say, hey, we need to talk. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm going through things right now, but we will make it through it. And then Subaru was like, what's going on? And she's like, well, I'm with child right now. And then Subaru was like, yay, yeah, I'm excited. And then next thing you know, he's like, wait, what? Like, how'd that happen? Because I didn't do nothing. It's pretty funny that I love that little comedy relief, or that comic relief that we were able to have within that portion. I mean, they covered it everywhere else, but I'd have to say that was probably one of the high time memorable moments that just made the show as far as that time period. It was funny. It's just like they added something in, I guess, for us 90s kids, because it was enjoyable. It was funny to be able to catch something like that being thrown into that show. And with the closeout of the Sanctuary arc, everything's restored back until the only way, and then through the battle where it gets insane. The closeout of the Sanctuary arc, which is also the closeout of season 2, we see the team up of Beatrice. Beatrice gets saved by Subaru, and this is the part of which is very interesting. The final battle was definitely not the Roswell versus Rom, which Rom does like inherently win in a sort of way. breaks Roswell out of that slave mentality he had behind that book, behind the prophecy. And the biggest battle is when the sanctuary is saved. Subaru runs back finally, finally. Subaru finally makes it back to the estate, and the biggest battle gets insane. It gets insane. We see everybody teaming up, and what's crazy is the wild part about that is when they return back to the sanctuary, which has happened a few times because it went out of order. And again, I will preface that every time is that every time we get to a new portion of the story, Saru does die here and there for it to get put back, and that does happen while he's trying to liberate Sanctuary. Well, going back to the estate, the same thing happens, and it gets crazy. Subaru ends up making it back, and multiple times he ends up running back into Elsa. Elsa, which is our lovely killer from the first season, who ends up killing Subaru while he is with Felt and the bargainer who ends up helping Felt out. He's trying to sell them his cell phone or trade the cell phone to get the insignia back for for um for $1 million. So now we're all the way back now, where Elsa finally returns, and it is really, really, really nice to finally see Elsa because we've been waiting for her to make a comeback. And what is really bad, what I don't care about Elsa too much, she's crazy. Don't get me wrong, and she's really strong. What I don't care for is that she always says, and you could just automatically think it's for the witch's cult at this point, but she always makes a reference to my clients, my client this, my client that. So you never know who hires her to go do all this crazy stuff that she does. You just know she goes and does it, and it's like you're just like, golly, this is crazy. Like, girl, what are you doing? And it gets better, but it gets worse. Like, her death was interesting, and she is actually taken out by Garfield. The Garfield and Elsa fight is probably one of the top tier fights out the show. And what I like about their fight is if any of y'all have played the Batman games where Batman kills Joker and then Joker haunts him in within, like, it's like in his subconscious within all the, like, the fights and everything that's going on. It is insane. It's insane because now Garfield is now met with Elsa in his subconscious, just kind of toying at him, taunting or teasing him, anything throughout the whole ordeal. So when Subaru returns back to the estate, he's back there to recover Rim, the vegetable body of Rim, and you have Otto that's with him. You also have Garfield, Federica, and Petra, which is one of the girls that was from the village who is now working as a maid at the Roswell estate. Well, then we also see something very interesting. Melly, which is another girl from the village, is actually Elsa's sister and is trying to tear some stuff up. It is crazy. It is crazy. It makes you want to like laugh so hard, and you're like, "What the hell's going on here?" At this point, because you're just like, "Why? That's your sister." So we end up finding out that Elsa has an evil sister that was kind of looming about the whole time, and it makes sense on why. It just makes sense. Everything makes sense, and it feels good. It's a good make sense. It's not a bad make sense. It's just like, okay, I understand what's going on here. I'm with it. I end up liking how they did that. I feel like they executed that well with bringing the little sister in, because they knew that there at some point there was a little bit more to the story, and I liked how they wrapped that up. They didn't disappoint. They helped us out to be able to finally understand what was going on. So I'm by far not mad at all with what they did for us as far as that goes. Um, so nonetheless, you can't really be all too, you know, like let down by that little portion. But Garfield ends up ending Elsa due to a small situation, and it was because Melly was about to get hurt, and Garfield most definitely took heavy advantage of the situation. Heavy advantage of the situation, and it is very smart on his part for taking such a huge jump at making sure he's able to really take advantage of that. And it was awesome. You can't go wrong with how he really just stepped up and took over and just made that his moment. I really like Subaru. Between Subaru getting all his people together, I'd have to say that was an amazing feat by young Garfield. Young Garf definitely stepped up and handled that big time. And the rest of season 2 really gets to wind down. We see a lot of different things. And at the end of season 2, we are finally met with, because that was like the last final like clashes here and there. We're finally met with the problem of the soul of Puck being missing, and it's a very sad moment where now things are kind of just like, they're down. Everything's not good right now, sadly. Well, now we got a bigger problem now, which is it's pretty sad on how they do this. The bigger problem now is that we have a very, I hate to use the word arbitrary situations. It's a very saddening situation where now the only way to revive or get this crystal soul shard back is to go travel to this city, this other nation, and get it there. And they had this huge meeting to be able to go put it together. And of course, there's some things I don't want to leave out within most of the things. I feel like there's a couple characters I forgot to mention, but Cruce, so which is one of the people that are part of this whole ordeal. Her memories were also eaten away by gluttony during the White Whale arc. So she is also part of a lot of the war planning and stuff, and part of like later meetings. And she says, she still can pick up her sword and fight. She just doesn't remember, interpersonal situations. And it is very interesting on how all this goes and the plot is heading. And what I will have to do, I will most definitely not cover season 3 here. I know I prefaced and said season 3 will be covered in this one, but I feel like this is a solid way to say this would be just only season two, and our next episode will definitely cover season three. Um, I don't want to yap this completely out the way with both season two and season three. Season two just had so much to cover within this, and I don't want to lose y'all as the audience with season two and season three, and then this be a 2 hour long podcast. So I thank y'all so much. We will end it with the journey doesn't stop there. They must find a way to get the soul crystal of Puck back together so we can have the access to Puck again. Because that is why Emil gets down and sad and everything. And the next portion is crazy wild, and I can't wait to cover it with y'all. And it was a pleasure being able to come back and be able to drop such a great amount of information, all from of course memory, and trying to um, rationalize everything that happened. It was such a good show. Again, season two held the same love and passion season one had. Season three is where we see the decline, and I still enjoyed it. Me and my daughter still watched it, like I said, and I can't wait to cover it with y'all. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. And if you have not checked out the other episodes, listen to them. Definitely check out and see where we're at with the development of all the different ones. And sooner or later, season three of Fire Force will be covered. I'm pretty stoked about that. That was awesome. I can't. I've watched so many different animes, and I've been given so many different options to watch. I've finally wrapped up a lot of them, so I can't wait to cover them with y'all and be able to give y'all something else to watch. So, like I said again, thank you so much, and y'all have a blessed one. Until next time.